example, we're going to build a simple app that's going to contain some text and graphics, and we'll work with doing a little bit of layout. So this is an example of what our finished one will look like. I've just started running it in the emulator, and we have our song lyrics, a line who it's by, and a few lines from the lyrics, and then just a graphic to go along with it. So this is what a finished sample will look like. So let's get started. We're going to go into Eclipse and open a new project, create a new project in Eclipse. Okay, we'll start by creating a new project. Now, the last time we did our first Hello World example, we did File and New and Android project from there. Another technique or another alternative is on your toolbar you have a wizard to create a new Android project. So this time I'm going to click that. And we have a new Android project window, and this is, let's see, the project name. That's going to be where you'll be able to save your files into a folder for your project. So like we had done before with Hello Android or our Hello World script, this will be the project name that you'll be able to see in your Package Explorer. So I'm going to just call this Song Lyrics. And I'm going to create a new project in the default workspace that we had set up when we set up our work environment. So then I'm going to click Next. And for the target SDK, I'm going to go with 2.1. 2.1, if you remember, is the operating system that's on about 97% of the Android devices. So I'm going to target this for the largest audience that I can. And I'm going to click Next. Now, application name, this is what your users will see. They don't see the Package Explorer name. The application name is what they actually will see. So I'm going to call this the name of the song that I'm going to write my song lyrics for. And the package name, again, is typically your domain name in reverse. So, and then the name of your project. So I'm just going to call this Song Lyrics. Now, if you don't have anything right now for a domain name, you can make one up. Do, com.example. And the name of your package. Now, create an activity. The activity is the name of your first screen. So a screen is called an activity. So to begin with, I'm just going to call this main. And we have a minimum SDK of 7 that goes with the 2.1 operating system that we selected on the previous screen. So I'm going to click Finish and expand my list of files over here. Now, sometimes, again, if you see little red marks over here for errors, it may take a second or two for Eclipse to finish saving all the files that it needs to work with, and in the meantime it kind of thinks that there's something wrong. So don't worry if you see that there for a second or two. Alright, now let's start in with going into the Resources folder and into Layout, and we're going to open up main XML. I'm just going to double click in order to open it up. So now, similar to how we did our Hello World, this time you can see this is the application name, and then we have Hello World main. So this is the user interface, and we also have it's actually written in XML. So we have the graphical layout, and then we have the main XML version. So I'm going to click on that just to switch over, and again to look at how our layout view is set up. Now, Android XML layouts consist of a number of different user interface components called views. And they also have layout managers called view groups. So in our main XML, we have one view group. And it's got a single view inside of it, and this is our single view that's inside our view group. Now if you go back and you look, we have a text view and it's saying hello. Now if I switch back to the graphical layout view again, you remember hello was in there, but this has a lot more. It says hello world main. So how did it get from hello to hello world main? We go back into the main XML and we look at this piece right here, our @ string. This must mean that our text string for hello is stored somewhere else, and it's grabbing this value and replacing it with the value that is someplace else. Android uses what's called resource properties, and it's considered good practice to take the details of your user interface and put them in property files. And we do this with text strings in our Android development because it will be one centralized location where you could go in and do your spell check. You could go in and easily change the name of something or the text on something, and even for internationalization if you wanted to convert the language. So it's nice to have a property setup where you have one place to go to get information on that. So where is this string information? If you look in your Package Explorer on the left, under Values, we have a strings.xml file. And I'm going to double click to open that. And then you can see at the top, we can quickly get back and forth between main and strings. But here we have a graphical editor to work with strings. So if I click hello up here, you can see that we have a name and a value. So it's grabbing this in our main XML, but in our user interface, it's actually showing this. So again, let me switch back to main XML, and you can see this value hello is returning or displaying this value in our user interface. So we could change this. So if I wanted to say maybe the singer of this. Now you can see that I've changed it. The asterisk indicates that the file hasn't been saved. So I'm going to update the save on my file. I'm going to come back to my main XML. Now you can see this hasn't changed because it's still connecting with the hello key. But if I go to my graphical layout, it still hasn't changed. Sometimes you just need to take this and maybe move it a little bit, make it think that it needs to be updated, and now that just expanded all the way down, so I'm just going to bring it back up again. So now I have, instead of Hello World Main, I have this displaying by Frank Sinatra. There's also, we're in the graphical view, there's also a strings.xml version. And when we pop in here, you can start to see the name and values that the graphical user interface was showing us. So we have hello and then the value that's associated with that. So back in our main XML, I'm going to switch back to the XML view. You can see where it's going to the strings.xml file. And in this case, it's returning the value that's associated with hello. And the value that's associated with hello is now by Frank Sinatra. Here's our app name. So if you decided at this point you needed to change that, you could. and that is being displayed back in the graphical layout here at the top of our view. So we'll continue with this. We're going to add some new lines of text, and in this example I'm going to do this through the XML. Well, we can do it both ways. We can say, let's go into the graphical view and add a line of text in here. So I'm going to add a line for the first line All right, we have a string here, and I'm going to put in the name, and I'll say line A, and the value is going to be the first line in the song. And I'm just going to do another add. The second line will be line B, and then the value and I'll add another. And the last line. Okay, actually I didn't want to click that. Now if I switch over to my strings.xml, you can see here I've got line A, B, C, and D with my text in here. So either place I could copy this line and paste it in and then just change the name and the values in here, or use the graphical editor, whichever is your preference. It doesn't make any difference, it all stores in the same place. Again, I'm going to save my file to update it. Now let's go back into our view, and I'm going to go to the main XML. So if I want another line in here, let me take this line of text and I'm going to paste this in. And instead of hello, let's make this line A. And I'm going to go back to the graphical layout, and here we are. We have the first line of our lyrics. So I'm going to add the remaining lines to my lyrics. I'm going to go into the into the main XML view, and I'm going to put my other lines in by just copying and pasting. So that will be line B, line C, and line D. And line these back up. And I'm just going to change the strings that will be displayed in here. Must not have saved them. So A, B, C, D, save, switch back to my graphical layout, and here we go. Alright, so we have our lines for our song lyrics, and they're all kind of squished in there together. So let's see what we can do about making a little bit more space in here. Alright, let's start with the line by Frank Sinatra. So we can come in, and there's some buttons across the top up here that you can use for making some adjustments, and I'm going to choose change margins. So I'm going to select the element that we want to adjust and change margins, And I could do this for all, which means top, right, bottom, and left. I just want to do top and bottom. So I'm going to have the top, say maybe 15. Now as I start to type it in, you can see a little hint here. It says use 15 dp instead. dp refers to density independent pixels, which is a unit of measurement that's based on the physical density of the screen. And they're relative to 160 dpi screen. So 1 dp is the equivalent to 1 pixel on a 160 dpi screen. But the ratio of the density pixels to pixel changes with the screen density. And it doesn't always do it in direct proportion. But the preferred unit of measurement is dp. So it'll remind you of that as you go. So I'm going to put that in for the top and the bottom. And click OK. And then you can see now we have a little bit of spacing in here. Now if I want to center his title, what was confusing when I first started looking at this was going in here and then changing some of these, that's called gravity. And if I change the gravity to center, it's like it doesn't do anything. So then, you know, you can try playing with a bunch of different things. I put it back to left just so that you can see what happens. I'm going to make that smaller. Now when I change the center of gravity to center, it centers it between the left and right margin. So that was something that I found a little bit confusing at first, so I thought I'd point that out so you didn't spend hours looking for it. Okay, next, the next 4 lines, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select each of these because I want them all to, we're going to move them in from the left a little bit and add a little bit of spacing in between them. So we're going to go into Change Margins. Now if we wanted all of these margins to be the same, again we would change it up here, but I'm just going to change the left margin, let's say 20 dp, and let's change the bottom margin, that'll be spacing between the bottom of each of these lines, and let's try, let's see, 15 was a lot, so we'll do 10 dp. And of course you can always come back in and change that. Alright, so now we have a little bit more spacing out here and it looks nicer, not as squished up. And if we go back into main XML, we can see the changes that working in the graphical interface added to our XML. So you can see where it added margin bottom, margin top, for each of the elements that we had selected. So I'm going to keep saving as I work. Let's go back to the graphical layout. Now I'm going to put a picture down here, one of the covers from the album that this song was on. So I went out and I found a copy of the album. Now of course if you're developing for a regular app, you have to get copyright permission in order to use that, but this is just for illustrative purposes in our class or in our example here. Now the file that I have is Fly Me to the Moon. So when I open it up, you can see that this is the name of the file, flymetothemoon.jpg, and this is the file size. So the files for graphics are going to go into our resources folder, and you're going to put them in one of these drawable folders, high DPI, low DPI, medium DPI. And I'll let you know that right up front, if your file name has any spaces in it, you'll get an error. So let me just show you what happens when we try to do that. I'm going to take my file that is on my desktop and I'm just going to drag it over here, and I'm just going to put it in the, let's put it in the HDPI, right? I'm going to release it over here, and it's going to say copy files. So it'll keep the original in its an original location and make a copy in this folder. So I click OK. Now it says, giving me all kinds of warnings. It must contain only A through Z, 0 through 9, underscore, and a period. So this will cause an error. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to say, yes, I really do want to delete it. I'm going to rename my file to something else without spaces. So I'm just going to shorten it and say fly me. And I'm going to now drag it over into my drawable resources folder and copy. So no new error messages. Now to put our graphic on the screen down here, I'm going to go to Images and Media in our Widgets section. And this first icon here is for an image view, so I'm just going to click and drag it over. And now it pops up and it says, okay, what is the resource that you want to use this? It still thinks the other one's there. Don't worry about that. Next time you reopen the file, it'll clear it out. So I'm just going to choose the fly me without a space in it and click OK. So now we have our image on screen. And again, I'm going to change the gravity on this to center. I don't always like centered things, but in this case I think it looks a little better. And I'm going to put a little bit of space between these two, so I'm going to change the margin, and I'm going to add to the top margin, maybe, let's try 30 dp and see what happens. That looks good. So I'm going to save everything. And now I'm going to test this in my emulator. Now I want to make sure that I click on the folder name for the Project Explorer folder. If you click on one of these other ones, it thinks it's trying to run one of these files and you'll get an error. Let me just show you what I mean. If I happen to be here on main.xml and then I click run. Okay, here's what happens. So it's trying to run main.xml and do whatever it's supposed to try to do to export it or run it. And I get this main out XML. And you can see here the error messages. And error in XML file, aborting build. Doesn't necessarily mean there's an error in this file, but we were trying to run this instead of the project. So what you can do in this case is you can close out this main out XML, and I'm just going to delete this main out XML file from the project. Are you sure you want to delete it? Yes. Now I come back up here and select my project file because that's what I want to run. I want to run my project. The final so now I'm going to click our app with our song lyrics. And so far no errors. Some formatted text launching the emulator with a graphic on the page. And it's going to take a minute. Now if for some reason you have a problem running this in the emulator, it may be that you don't have an emulator set up for the right SDK or for the right version of the operating system. So in that case, you want to come down here to not the SDK manager, the device manager, the virtual device manager. And in here, you want to make sure that you have a virtual device that is set up to be able to display the proper operating system that you had selected. And if not, then you have to go back in and create a new one. So that's the basics of creating a project with some text and a graphic.